Welcome back to the Wizard Shop and another wonderful Wizard video. Just got this 95 Firebird in with a window that won't work. Let's find out why right after this. So the customer just brought this 95 Pontiac Firebird today, and his complaint is that his driver's window does not operate. And I get many phone calls about similar situations asking, my window won't go down, Car Wizard. What's it going to cost to fix it? Over the phone, I don't even know what's wrong. I mean, I don't typically like to guess at stuff. I'm not very good on the phone about saying, oh, well, it's your relay. That's a guaranteed fix. Who knows? You have to get the car in the shop to find out what's wrong. So based on the issue that I just gave you, the complaint the customer has, how many problems can you think of that would cause this? What do you think is wrong? You just got a phone call. The customer's waiting. What are you going to tell them? So when I get this question, I just run it through my head. It's a switch, a motor, the regulator, the actual wheels and arms and things that are inside the door, or a relay, no power, no ground. There's several different things that can cause this. And you can rule out a lot of them just by having a seat in the car. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So the first thing I want to check before I do anything, because on these older GM products, there isn't cables and wheels and things like in a modern car that smoothly operates the glass up and down. These actually have the old style metal arms, like an X shape, like the old days. And those frequently break, the wheels break off, the track gets jammed up and things of that nature, and it won't move. Also, when the wheels break off, the glass will just be floppy loose. And that's what Hoovie's was. His Camaro, the Z28 that we just got running, had been sitting. The glass was just almost like a steering wheel. You could go like this with the glass. I've tested this one, and as you can see, it's nice and tight. Based on just that right there, I could say the regulator's not broke. The next step that I do is actually try to operate the window with these switches. Unfortunately, they have been broke prior to it being in the shop. So I guess I got to at least take this off real quick. Let me just snap off and get this out of here. So we'll try the passenger window. It goes up. It goes down. So we know that works. Let's try the driver's window. Just like in a previous video where I showed you guys wizard tips, I said that you could look at the dome light while you press the button and see if the dome light dims whenever you try to operate the motor. So there's our dome light. I'm going to operate the switch, and it does not change the brightness or go dim on us. So that tells me that there's no load on the circuit, like the motor is not trying to work, or either that it's jammed up in a position where power is not getting to the motor. But if the power was making it to the motor and the motor would possibly work, we would see the light go dim. And it could be that very well that it's jammed up, the glass is jammed up, but the light didn't dim. It's perfectly bright.
Car Wizard, could the switch be bad?
It could, and that's what I'm getting ready to get to next. The relay to operate the motor is inside the dash, and when I push it, if you quietly listen, did you hear that little click? I heard the relay try to operate. Let's try it again. You hear that? That means the switch works. If it can make the relay operate, it's obviously getting the signal to tell the window to go down, but it's not going down. The next step is we need to pull this panel off to find out if something's jammed, if the motor's fried, is there wiring that's been cut? We don't know that until we get the panel off. Further testing will require this panel off. So let's go ahead and take it off real quick, and let's dive into this and find out what's going on. Okay. Go ahead and unplug this. This is definitely old school, guys, with these pins and like that. Mrs. Wizard actually helped her sister a while back put a regulator in, kind of walked her through it over the phone. Kind of interesting. I probably wouldn't want to do that. End up breaking something. Somebody, I thought that's what you told me to take off, or. But her sister was in college and didn't really have the money at the time to really dump a bunch into her car. Now I pull off door panels on probably 100 different cars, models in a year. It could be a Kia, it could be a Maserati, it could be a Camaro, a Firebird, it could be a F-150, a Chevy Silverado, a Ferrari. There are so many door panels I've taken off that I don't know offhand off the top of my head, oh, this, and this comes off. There's no way I can memorize that many cars. So, when you're taking a panel off you haven't had off before and you think you have all the screws out, don't just go yanking and ripping. You could break something. Feel around the bottom for any screws or any kind of holes where there should have been a screw. I'm not feeling anything there. I've got that center screw out. Go ahead and take this off. Disconnect the power lock. There we go. On these older General Motors cars, the lock switch or the actuator or the slide that you use to lock the door, it just snaps onto this rod. You just want to pry it off and set it aside. On any car that's from the 90s especially, you don't want to just, like I said, you don't want to yank the plastics. You'll end up cracking and breaking it. As I remove this little trim piece here that goes around the door handle, guess what I found? Another screw. That's why you don't just go, okay, I got it, and start pulling. You'll end up breaking something. Somebody's been in this one before. The screws kind of rounded out a little bit. That doesn't surprise me on this old of a car. Okay, got that loose. I found another screw. Like I said, you have to feel around. There's a tunnel that goes through the armrest here. Well, it's out anyway. Aha, another one. This feel that I'm going around, I'm not breaking anything. This feel that I have, I can tug on stuff. It's almost as if, I've actually described this to people before that are trying to get into mechanics, they're new to it, and they don't have that feel or that touch. It takes years to get it. It's almost like a calibrated hand. I know that sounds dumb, but it's actually true. I can feel bolts when they're about to strip out. I can feel that I'm gone too tight or too loose, or I can just feel it in my wrist. My brother, who's a neurosurgeon, agrees that there are certain things that he does after years. He knows by the feel of his hand. That's correct. I get young mechanics in here and they're crack, break, snap, and it's either too much power or not enough power. And the balance in between, it doesn't come within a month or two. Sometimes not even a year or two. Okay. There it is. The screw was fighting me. There's one more screw that was fighting me in there. There we go. And we had to take a little bit of break there. There had a little miniature hailstorm, which is pretty common in Kansas. We had marble-sized hail. Luckily it didn't hurt anything. Anyways, back to cars. So I got this panel off, and this is the time that a rookie takes it and starts walking, and yank and breaks some wiring that goes to the speaker. I already have it unhooked. There's this little speaker wire. You can't just go yanking. You need to, once you get it separated, you peek down in and make sure there's no wiring. Get it all unhooked, then you can take it off. As you can see, this has little hooks. Some panels pry off, and some panels slide upwards and then off. This is one that you have to slide upwards. That's what I was doing. I was feeling, is this a pull type or a slide type? And I could feel it sliding, and I knew this is a sliding type. If you take a sliding type panel and just pry it off like any other car, you'll break all of those little teeth that slide into the slots. See all these little hooks? If you break those off, they'll never hold properly again. You can glue them on, they'll break right off. You got to be careful, especially on older cars. They got so many different ways. They have little metal, little hooks. They have plastic hooks, metal push pins, plastic push pins. You never know until you get it off. So we're at the point here, we see this plastic shield, and this is when I start doing discovery. Has this been apart before? Hasn't been messed with before? And I can see it's been torn here. It's been super glued back on. It just literally just falls off. Somebody's been in here before already, which, like I said, doesn't surprise me. It may have had a window regulator in the past. Go ahead and pull this stuff off. Most of it's barely on there anyway. You don't want to throw this plastic away if you pull it all the way off, because this is kind of like a wind moisture barrier. It keeps road noise and stuff out. You want to put that back on just like they did before. They glued it back on. I've used clear packing tape before, or glue, or whatever it takes to get it back on. You want to try to at least keep it in place as best as you can. As you can see, there's an arm. Here's a track here that it rides up and down. On Hoovies, actually, the wheel that goes up and down on this track was broken. We had to weld it back on, but this one seems to be intact, luckily. Yep. I don't see that we have an issue with the track itself. Everything seems intact. But the motor, as you can see through this hole, there's the motor. It's literally right here. We're going to get to the wiring on that, and I'm going to use my power probe. I'll show you the power probe, how we can force test it. First thing I want to do is take this speaker off. That'll give us a nice hole to reach up and unhook the wiring. Typically on interior pieces for General Motors, the 90s, 2000s, they love to use 5.5s, millimeter, and 7s. You can pretty much bet on that. There we go. So unplug that. There's our speaker. Set that aside. So it's common misconception that the switch, you put power or ground to this connector and it goes straight to the motor. It doesn't. All this does is turn a relay on and off. And there's two wires coming from the body loom that do not go to this. I'm trying to get to those. There we go. That's our power to the motor. All the switch does is reverse the polarity to go reverse or forward, basically. So let's hook our switch up and let's go get our power probe. So I've got my handy dandy power probe plugged into the car battery. I can give it a ground or give it a power. What I'm going to do right now is make sure the key's on. I want to touch the terminals in here. and operate the switch. 12 volts and ground. If I go up, it turns it to a ground. If I go down, it turns it to power. Let's try the other terminal. So, there's nothing wrong with the switch, otherwise it wouldn't get power. There's nothing wrong with the wiring. There's nothing wrong with power or ground going to it. There's not a blown fuse, or we wouldn't have power there. There is power going to the motor that should operate the window up and down, but it's not. I can say with a 99% positivity now that the motor is bad. It's not a switch. It's not the power and ground going to the motor. There's nothing left but the motor. Now on these, I know from experience, especially on Hoovies that we just did, you cannot replace the motor without pulling the entire track assembly all the way out. All the rollers, all the arms, everything has to come apart. Then you could test the motor or pull it apart or replace the motor. But it's not financially feasible to do that. I have found that through your parts store, your favorite parts store, you can buy the motor and the complete arm assembly for not much more than just the motor itself. And the labor to take the motor apart and put the new motor on, you have to drill out rivets. It doesn't make sense to just replace the motor. It makes sense to pull the whole assembly out, throw it in the trash, scrap metal, put a whole new assembly in, it'll be back in business. One thing I wanted to show you guys, these are the years of rivets. If you want to take all this stuff out, you have to bust out the rivets. If you want to go back to my video of wizard tips, I think it's number 2, I show how to take those out and drill out the rivets without damaging your door. This is plastic. This isn't metal. As you can see, it's white plastic. So be careful. You don't want to punch a hole or drill a hole through it. So now I have my answers. It's not a switch. It's not a relay. It's not a fuse. It's not wiring. It's not an issue of getting power to the motor. It's the motor itself. So now I can get an estimate together and I can present it to the customer. If he says, I don't have that kind of money right now, all he has is the time for me to figure out what was wrong, put this back together, and he can have it back. Or he can say, yes, fix it. And now all I have to do is replace the guts and put it back together. So I'm going to go work up an estimate, and we're going to get the go-ahead on this and get this thing fixed for this guy. But I wanted to show you guys every window regulator issue that comes in the door. That's the same process I use every time. Is it a switch? I rock it back and forth and watch the dome light. If it dims, then I know at least power is getting to the motor. And usually I don't even have to go any further than that. When I see that, I know that's the bad motor. Or something's locked up in there. This case, I had to pull the panel off because I didn't see the dome light flicker. I could hear the relay working. Now the question is the power getting to the motor? And we just confirmed it is. So a lot of you would like to see me do this repair, but I'm going to let Junior Mint do it. He needs to get trained on this. He's actually did Hoovies. He did a really good job. This is the type of things that gets him faster and more competent in getting these things done. And this isn't a 10-minute job. As you see with the rivets and everything, and taking all these track pieces out, it's quite a large job. It's quite a big job. And they never made this easy with having to fish all the arms and hardware and pieces through these little holes. So I think I will leave that for Junior Mint. So like I said, I'll get the estimate worked up. We'll get the go-ahead on this and let Junior Mint have at it. But I thought you guys would like to follow along in our diagnostic process, see if you can guess what was wrong and what it actually ended up being wrong. It's a pretty nice car, it's in pretty good shape. The power probe that I just used, you can see that on my Amazon affiliates page along with every other tool that I use. Check out my affiliate page, see what I use, see if you're interested in buying any. Put it on your wish list if you want. Also, if you haven't hit the subscribe button, go ahead and do that now. We've got many more cool videos to come. Thanks for watching.